Hey guys, this episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our newest partner, Operation Christmas Child, a project of the Christian International Relief Organization Samaritan's Purse, the world's largest Christmas project of its kind. Operation Christmas Child is awesome. Since 1993, they've collected and delivered more than 188 million gift-filled shoeboxes to children in need in more than 170 countries and territories. And it's delivered in the hands of children through local churches. Every shoebox gift is an opportunity to share about Jesus and God's love. So will you join us? Will you join Operation Christmas Child this season by packing shoebox gifts or building a shoebox gift online? National Collection Week is coming November 15th through the 22nd. Shoeboxes are going to be collected across the country at nearly 5,000 drop-off locations. We want you to come and join Operation Christmas Child. Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to learn how to pack a shoebox or build one online. Operation Christmas Child.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
And welcome everyone to the show. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. You need to go check out our website, sportspectrum.com, for all of our content. It's free and it's available right there at the website. We're talking about podcasts, devotionals, articles, all available for free at sportspectrum.com. And we have one fantastic show today with Stan Johnson, Loyola Marymount head basketball coach. This is a guy who has been through it. He has grinded through this college basketball coaching journey for many years. Assistant coaching stops at Bemidji State, Southwest Baptist, Cal State Northridge, Utah, Drake, Arizona State, and Marquette. And finally, in March of 2020, right after the pandemic hit, Stan Johnson was named the head coach, his first head coaching job at Loyola Marymount. Now, I know for me, when I think of Loyola Marymount, I'm old enough to go back and remember Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball and that amazing 1990 run through to the Elite Eight in March Madness. Well, it's been a while. Loyola Marymount is looking to restore their greatness, if you will, in the basketball world, and Stan Johnson is a part of that. And a part of that process, they went 13-9 last year, 7-5 in the West Coast Conference, and finished in the top 3 of the West Coast Conference standings for the first time since 2005-2006. And Stan Johnson guided his team through this COVID-19 pandemic, posting a winning record in the WCC for the first time since 2011-2012. Stan Johnson, I loved hearing his wisdom on leadership, his story. When he was 10 years old, he was born in Liberia, West Africa. When he was 10, his family escaped a civil war to come to Utah, to come to the United States. He has a strong faith in Jesus. He leads with Christ in front. And this was an awesome time talking to Stan Johnson, the Loyola Marymount head basketball coach. Take a listen. Hey, Coach Johnson, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's good to have you here on the show. I do want to start with March 20th, 2020. As I do my research and I see that that's the day, about a week after the pandemic, actually, but that's the day that you were named the head coach of Loyola Marymount. It's obviously a great day for you and an important day, but so much was going on during that time. It's your first head coaching job. Which was pretty cool, and grinding for many years as an assistant. Let's start with that day and just what that moment meant for you to become the head coach. And then we'll talk about kind of all that was going on around that time and kind of how you adapted to that. But what did that mean for you to be offered that job with the Lions and have an opportunity to become a head coach?
Well, it's incredible. I mean, the phone rang, and I've been on the other end of that a few other times where you didn't get a job.
Yeah.
So when the call came in, I wasn't expecting it. And, in your mind, you're going, you don't know which way it's going to go. But actually, when the words came out, it was a little surreal. You work your whole life to hear that. And it was awesome. It was, so many years of work and back and forth and struggle and triumph and all those things that led to hearing that. So I was extremely excited because it was a journey, that had seen a lot of ups and downs. That's coaching. And you've in your mind, I've had a picture of what that day would look like. And it was even better than, what I expected, because this was a place I really wanted to be. Like this was an area and a job that I really wanted. And it's amazing, you look back and you go, man, I'm so thankful. Not that the other places weren't great, but I'm thankful it happened how it happened and where I got because of the location and all those things. So it was incredible.
That's great to hear. But then, here you become a head coach, Stan Johnson. And guess what? We're in a pandemic. And guess what? You have to navigate through everything that's been going on for the last 18 to 20 months now, it feels like. But I'm just curious for you, what it was like to coach last year when you get that job and it's your first opportunity and things aren't normal at all. I mean, you coached for many years, so you've been around the game for a long time and you know how this thing works, even if it wasn't as a head coach. And then you inherit, just like all of us had to inherit, this pandemic and everything else that was going on and kind of navigate through that. What was that like?
Well, a couple of things. One, early in the process, when they called me and asked me about my interests and we were going down that road, my agent and I did have that conversation. I mean, it was the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, we certainly didn't have the information then as we do now. I mean, when I came out here to interview, I was on a plane with 10 people leaving Milwaukee to LA. I didn't even know if anybody was flying the plane.
Right.
I mean, it was very eerie. But I remember us having that conversation and I had peace. And I just felt like, sometimes God works in different ways. And if this was where I was supposed to be, regardless of the circumstances, I wasn't going to just turn down the opportunity, because there was a thought early, like, do you really want to do this? There's so much unknown. Do you want to start your career like this? Coaching is already hard and we don't know what's coming. But I mean, it wasn't 5 minutes after that I said, absolutely, if this door opens, it's going to be God. And that's where I'm supposed to be. And, so that gave me peace. But you know what? The year was difficult and for everybody, from a mental standpoint. We saw across the country, across the world, the impact the disease has had on so many people, so many lives. So I don't take that lightly, but I really thought it gave us a chance here to do some things we wouldn't have been able to do had it been a normal year. Like I had a chance to really sit back and evaluate what this program needed, what it needed, from a facility standpoint, upgrades, what we needed emotionally, what we needed to create change, the time I had to spend with my guys. I mean, I was in Milwaukee. They were all across the country because they were home, across the world. But every week I spoke to everybody, I don't know how many times, whether it was FaceTime, Zoom, call. Had I had the job and things were normal, immediately after meeting your team, you're flying around, you're trying to recruit, you got so many people walking in your office, and there's a way that, you get a lot of things pulling at you. I didn't have that. And I told our team in this moment, we had a chance to really push reset. We had a chance to push pause, but we had an opportunity now while everybody was waiting. Our motto was win the wait. And part of winning the wait was how close can we get? And how can we really, really, really embrace what's coming? And I told them the teams that can pivot the best and who can handle this crisis the best were going to be the teams that had the great success. And that was going to be more of a mental thing. So from a mental standpoint, we had a chance to implement, our mental performance program. I hired a mental performance coach and we just started building the mental game. And I think those things served us well throughout the year. And that's why we were able to hit that switch. And we had 2 COVID pauses. And I mean, both of them were probably for 14 days each. And we probably had maybe 2 or 3 practices in those stints before a game. And every time we had that, we came back better. And I think that had to do more with what we did leading up to the season and the time we had because of COVID. You know, also with all our facilities, I got here, I'm like, man, how are we going to change all this? You know, people were being stingy with money, of course, right? Everyone was being very careful.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of things to get done. And I'm thankful there was a pause for us because I didn't think we were up to par what it needed to be to bring a kid in. And now, by the time all that was done, new locker room, hallways, gyms being redone, you know, we were able to get a lot of things done that we may not have been, you know, if there wasn't for COVID.
So for you, and we're going to talk about sort of the spiritual journey that you've been on and your walk with the Lord, but what was that time like for you and God? Just kind of, what was he showing you? What was he revealing to you during that time? Maybe it was that time that you were locked up. Maybe it was just throughout the season last year and kind of, like you said, navigating and pivoting through all of the different hurdles that were presented your way. I know you had games that were, you know, postponed and COVID positives, as you said, and all these things. What do you think the Lord was kind of teaching you and showing you during that time?
Well, a couple things. From a bigger picture, the most important thing he showed me is I'm going to show you grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to show you mercy. And I'm going to show you that you have no control. And I'm going to show you that although you are a sinner and you're unworthy, I'm going to still bless you. And I think that's the thing. That's the biggest thing. I think sometimes when you profess to be a Christian or whatever, people expect you to be perfect. Right. And there's a certain expectation that comes with that. And
Sure.
Maybe there should be. But we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. The pastor's not perfect. You're not perfect. We're all imperfect people.
That's right.
And there are so many people who may have even maybe a stronger walk. I don't know. You know, only God knows that. But he gave me an opportunity, which I always say I don't deserve anything. Right. Number two, he showed me that it's on his time, not yours. In your world, you had this magical thing happening. I gave you a job at the height of a pandemic. Deal with that. Third thing he showed me is that through adversity, through all that, I'm going to still bless you. And I'm going to show you that you have zero control. You have zero control over your pauses. You have zero control over COVID. You can't control these circumstances. I'm in control. Right? So that's what I learned. It's like sometimes as human beings, we try to control a lot of things. We have zero control. We have all these things that our vision of what things should be. And sometimes our vision of what things should be are much smaller than what God's vision is. But I want to go back to what I said earlier. I am not deserving of anything. And I have fallen short many of times. And even with that, God has chosen to bless me. It has more to do with him than it has to do with me. And that's what he was telling me.
This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by Operation Christmas Child. It's a project of the Christian International Relief Organization Samaritan's Purse, and it's the world's largest Christmas project of its kind. The mission of Operation Christmas Child is to demonstrate God's love in a tangible way to children in need around the world and to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Delivered into the hands of children through local churches, every shoebox gift with Operation Christmas Child is an opportunity to share about Jesus Christ and God's love. Since 1993, Operation Christmas Child has collected and delivered more than 188 million gift-filled shoeboxes to children in more than 170 countries and territories. And this year hopes to collect enough shoebox gifts to reach another 10 million children. So will you join us? Will you join Operation Christmas Child this season by packing shoebox gifts or building a shoebox gift online? National Collection Week is coming up November 15th through the 22nd. That's where shoeboxes will be collected across the country at nearly 5,000 drop-off locations. We'd love to have you join us. Anyone can do it. Individuals, families, churches, students, groups. Packing a shoebox is a great way to teach kids about thankfulness and giving back to those in need. Check out SamaritansPurse.org/OCC for Operation Christmas Child, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to learn how to pack a shoebox or build one online. Operation Christmas Child. Stan Johnson is our guest here on Sports Spectrum, Loyola Marymount head basketball coach. I want to go back a little bit, kind of learn about your journey, because I was fascinated to see you were born in Liberia in West Africa. So I have to imagine there's a story behind that and growing up and what it was like with your parents and your childhood. What was that story, and kind of share that with us growing up?
Yeah, well, my dad went to school at Montana Tech. He was a mining engineer. He found a way there, kind of paid for his own school. He was born in Liberia, West Africa. He met my mom there.
Okay.
After he was done with school, they moved back to Liberia. I was born there. My brother Destin and my sister Vanessa, both are younger. We were all born there. I was 10 when the Civil War broke out. Again, God's grace has really been over our family. I had a praying grandmother on my dad's side. And to this day, I always say this, I think her relationship with God was so strong. I mean, so strong. She's probably had the greatest faith of anybody I've been around. And I think because of that, escaping a war where so many people died, and we were able to escape because of my mom's citizenship, and we had dual citizenship, being protected in that situation. Even now, she's long gone, but the favor that I've been given, it comes from her. I think God has said, because you were so loyal and so true to me, I'm going to bless your family. And a lot of the things we've gotten, I think, is because of my grandmother. But we moved here because of that war. And I mean, I grew up playing soccer and tennis. I mean, I didn't know how to play basketball. This was not my life.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? This was not what it was supposed to be. And, it's amazing how things change.
Yeah. I mean, do you have memories at 7,
Yeah,
8, and 9?
I was 10 years old, so I remember everything. I remember being at gunpoint when the rebels came in and took over our community and country. And I remember getting on that war jet, being evacuated. I remember leaving the country with 3 bags. I remember leaving my dad behind because he wanted to go find his parents. I still remember it. Again, a young kid from Liberia, West Africa, a black kid, moving to Salt Lake City at some point. When I moved there, I mean, I was probably my brother and I, maybe a handful of African-American kids in that school at that point. Yeah. And you move to Utah and people aren't used to hearing about Africa. I couldn't tell you how many times I heard, hey, do you have a tail? Did you have animals in your backyard? I'm like, you guys got to stop watching the National Geographic. Africa is a continent, not a country. Right. Every country is different. But again, I'm thankful for those opportunities because I was able to, help shed light on, what it is to be from Africa, what Africa looks like. And more importantly, I was able to go through some tough times like that. And I think all those times have helped me become who I am today, especially as a leader.
At what point does that faith that you watched your grandmother have and the faith that you may have seen and kind of rubs off on you, right? But you can't have that faith and not make it your own. Like, it has to become your personal relationship with Jesus. So when does that take place for you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I grew up in church. I think all my uncles are ministers, so that's always been one of the strength of my entire family. I mean, my parents, they had a deep faith and we were in church. I mean, we grew up in church and every Sunday we went to church. I mean, if there was a church play program for kids, we were in it. And early age, I gave my life to Christ and was baptized and all that. So that happened for me very early. as a little kid.
But then growing, right? Like growing into that as you become an adult, maybe start to think about this basketball thing, this coaching thing. Kind of how did all that evolve for you? I mean, you said you didn't even play basketball until you came over here. I presume that's when you started kind of getting interested in the game. But kind of how did that all evolve for you to the point where you ended up becoming a coach?
Well, I learned very quickly if I was going to have friends in Salt Lake, I had to do what they were doing. And my first recess, they picked me first because I was the only black kid. So they assumed I had to play.
Right.
And I didn't tell them I couldn't play. So I was the first pick, and I stunk up the joint. And I was the last pick the entire year, to the point where when they were on pick 9 and they knew I was 10, the other team knew they're getting me. Oh my gosh. So I made a decision, like, if I'm going to have friends and I'm going to be connected to these people, I've got to learn how to play basketball. And all summer we lived maybe 200 yards from the elementary. I would go there with my ball, and I just taught myself and got pretty good. And I couldn't wait for recess the next year.
I bet.
Right. And it's amazing that ball, the connection it built.
Yeah.
And it made me a little more relatable to them. It made them relatable to me. I formed so many bonds there. I think out of all my friends, I was the only guy who could get a Division I scholarship, dating back to that. Played at Southern Utah. But I saw what basketball had done for me. I saw the relationships that it formed, the people that it brought in my life, and the power that it had behind it. And, I wasn't good enough to play professionally. I knew I didn't want to take my hand out of the huddle. And, we all can't be ministers. We all can't go that direction. But this was my way to give to others, to help other people become their best, to help people pursue the things they wanted. There was a strong calling on me in terms of leading and being a leader. And again, I always say this, that doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you get it right. I'm still trying to get it right.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that you don't fall short. And I like expressing that, because I think too often, we live in this climate of perfection. And even sometimes I think as believers, we can walk a very thin line, where we expect people to all be perfect. And I love it, because I'm an imperfect person doing something. And I hope that our kids and the people that I've coached can see that, but they can see a guy that's continually trying to strive to be better. And this has been my vehicle to do that.
No, I think that's great. I think, such an awesome platform to be able to share and to give and to serve, which I think is the essence of leading, and being a leader is giving back and serving others. But this coaching journey is hard. And you talked about it earlier, about the grind that you had through a lot of coaching stops. I mean, I was reading some of them earlier: Southwest Baptist, Cal State Northridge, Drake, Arizona State, Utah, Marquette, just lots of different journeys along the way. And a lot of this doesn't happen if you don't have a wife who's supporting. And I know you're married to Brittany, and you have 3 kids, and that has to come into play here when you kind of sign up for this. I remember just thinking about this for a second, when I made a decision to go into broadcasting, and I didn't know I was going to end up at ESPN, but I thought maybe someday I'll get there. My wife and I just started dating, and she sat there, and I said to her, I said, listen, I'm very interested in pursuing this relationship with you, but I work in a career field that may take me all over the country, because that's kind of how the broadcasting world works. Now, thankfully, I didn't have to do 7 or 8 different stops, but she had to be all in initially, or else this wasn't going to work. And she said, yes. She's like, I'm in. Wherever you end up, let's do it. Tell me your story with that, with your wife, and kind of the importance of having her as a support while you are able to kind of pursue this calling and this passion that you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds very much like yours.
Is that right?
I knew I wanted to coach. I went to Bemidji State my last year, and I finished up there my last year. And she actually came up and started college there. And and after that, I was offered a job there to coach. And one of the things, conversations just like that, this is what I'm going to do after college. This is what it looks like. And I don't know where this is going to go, but if you're not all in, this is probably a good time to get out, because it's not going to work. Now, fortunately for me, her dad was a high school coach, so she had that background of coaching. And, she was there, and then we got hired at Southwest Baptist, and she came there and finished school. We got married there, and, every trip we've made, she's been there. It's hard as a coach because, you're always gone. I tell my team here too, sometimes I spend more time with them than I do my own kids. And I don't say that like in a proud way.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what it calls for. And you better have somebody at home that can do the job and can hold it down. And I was very fortunate to have somebody who understood it and wanted to be in this field. And it doesn't make it easy. That doesn't mean that all days are easy. Again, I want to be clear. I mean, there's a lot of hard days, a lot of days we're not around. But I'm very thankful for that. I'm very grateful. But on the front end, I tell all coaches this, especially young guys, you on the front end, you better make sure that your girlfriend, your fiance, whoever understands what it is you're getting into, because if they don't, it can become a very miserable existence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's so important to have that because it's such a different, unique career path, especially in college coaching. You have the very few who go into coaching, get an opportunity and spend 30 or 40 or 50 years at one place. That's very, very rare. And so it usually requires that sort of, okay, God closes one door, the next door opens. And we have Monty Williams on, the Phoenix Suns head coach, recently on the show. And I remember asking him, as a follower of Christ, like, what was that like for him to be a head coach? Because he wasn't hired as a pastor or a minister. He's hired as a coach, but he's still a follower of Christ and kind of leading by example, by living out his faith and looking at this as an opportunity, as a calling for him. Is that how you view your job? Obviously, again, you're not a minister, you're not a pastor, but you are a follower of Christ, and you're also a coach, and you have a responsibility to lead a team, but leading, I guess, with Christ at the center. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, everybody does it differently. Sure. Again, I think, I'm hard on myself. I'm sure there's days, maybe if somebody walked in on the wrong day, they go, oof, I don't know, this guy, is he a Christian? I mean, someone
Sure.
could say that, but
Yeah.
I think it's very important for my team to see someone who's consistent, someone who serves them, someone who holds them accountable, and myself, someone who loves them, even when they don't do well, don't perform well, that they know that I'm still love them for who they are as a human being, not who they are as a player. Someone who, when they get married, I'm there. And someone who shows great strength and is authentic and real with them. Sometimes we can preach a lot of things, and the things I've tried to be careful is not to put anything on anybody,
Right.
but to try to live in a way and try to do my job in a way and try to love them in a way where they become curious and they want to know, or they see that. I think there's a fine balance, to that. So I think it's being consistent in who I am every single day, but making sure that they know that I love them regardless of who they are, because that's how God loves us. I've said it before. I fall short. God continues to love me. Mm-hmm. They fall short too. So, we can't ask God for forgiveness for different things or mercy for different things, but then we're unwilling to do that for the people that are around us. So I that's how I see my role, is to push these kids to a place that they can't take themselves. And hopefully in doing that, they see something much greater than that. And that's kind of how I try to go about doing it.
Oh, that's really well said. As we wind down, I do want to ask you, for some encouragement for those listening. We have a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes, even a lot of parents, but a lot of people who are hoping and maybe waiting for an opportunity like you did for many years as a coach. What encouragement would you have for them who are just kind of stuck and maybe they're just not sure when the next door is going to open, or maybe kind of like you, they've been trying and it didn't feel like it was ever going to happen, and suddenly you got that call and it happened to become a head coach. What encouragement would you have for those that are kind of stuck in that rut right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've lived this with my stops. I heard a thing the other day about a dog and an elephant. A dog can give birth within like 60 to 65 days.
Mm.
And sometimes there was a story about a dog who gave birth to 17 puppies at once.
Yeah.
The elephant gives birth, it takes 2 years. And if the dog was talking to the elephant, the dog would say, "Hey, I know you're not pregnant because I've given birth multiple times. And one of those times I gave birth to 17 puppies. Here you are.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you. 2-3 years have gone by. You're not pregnant." What the dog doesn't understand is that what's in that elephant is much greater. It's bigger. You don't see it as much, right? My point is, so are our dreams. Sometimes it takes longer to get where you want to go. That's because God's got something much greater than you even expect. So stop comparing yourself to the dog. Stop comparing yourself to everybody else. His time is greater than yours. And the best advice I can give you is it's all about the journey. Sometimes you don't get things right away because maybe if you got it right away, you wouldn't be able to keep it. The reason you go through those things is because once you get it, now you're able to sustain it. And that's where I feel I'm at. It was a long time. I want to be a head coach. I want to be a head coach. I want to be a head coach. But I always remember I'm doing what I'm called to do, regardless if I have that title or not. That being said, I want to be ready.
Right.
The Bemidji States, the Southwest Baptists, sweeping the floor, driving the bus, ordering the meals, recruiting, making $10,000 a year, sleeping in a guy's basement, going to Utah, having a great year. Setting records. All of a sudden, 2 years later, we're fired. Go to Drake, have a great year. 2 years later, we're fired. Go to Arizona State. Put great years together. New AD comes in, you're fired, right? Mm-hmm. All those opportunities, all those experiences, I really believe have shaped me and helped me. So now I'm at a point where I've seen a lot. I've seen the up, I've seen the downs. I've had to wait. And I believe that's going to be why we have success here. And that's what I would give people. Don't question what you're in. Don't question the season you're in. You're in it for a reason. Enjoy that. You don't just get to have fun at the top when you get to the top of the mountain. Joy is in the process. So that would be my advice.
That's really, really well said. I love that dog elephant story. I'm going to steal that, I think, Stan, the next time I'm asked a question about, waiting and kind of God's timing and God's plan. That's a great, great story. Thanks so much for being here. Best of luck this next season. It's so good that college basketball is just about here and we got another season upon us, and hopefully it looks a lot better as far as everything that we had to go through last year with the pandemic, but it looks like we're hitting a stride with crowds, and just, it'll be nice to have some normalcy with college basketball, and it's good to have it back. So good, best of luck to you and Loyola Marymount this season, and thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And many thanks to Coach Stan Johnson from Loyola Marymount for joining us here today on the Sports Spectrum podcast. I love talking to people like Coach Johnson, a leader at a high level, a Division I program who has been through it, going through adversity and just grinding through this journey to become a head coach, but leading in a way that serves, that loves, that cares for others, the same model that Jesus taught us in God's word. That's what Stan Johnson's trying to do now as a head coach with Loyola Marymount. And we're talking about a guy whose family escaped civil war at the age of 10 from Liberia and then never played basketball, taught himself, goes and plays Division I and becomes a coach, now a coach at Loyola Marymount, and leading with Christ at the center. And that story that he told of the dog and the elephant and kind of where God has him and where God has others and how everybody's journey is different, I loved it. I really did. I told him I'm going to steal it. I told him right after this podcast stopped taping that I'm going to use that wherever I go to tell people that their journey is different and unique. I like to call it blooming where we're planted. God has us right where we are on purpose for a purpose. And so we can't just sit around and mope when it's not going the way we think it should go. We have to stand up and say, okay, God, you have me here for a purpose. Let's find the joy in the journey, and let's lead in a way that's loving and serving and caring others. Stan Johnson called it winning the weight. I thought that was a really well said thing earlier in this podcast. Win the weight. And so that's my encouragement to you. If you're waiting right now on something from God, man, win in the weight. Many thanks to Stan Johnson for being here today on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you go check out our website every single day, sportspectrum.com. Tons of free content, tons of free resources for you to be encouraged in your faith and then to share with somebody else and encourage them on their journey. Podcasts, devotionals, articles. Man, go listen to this podcast and then share this with someone else. It might lead to a conversation that allows you to talk about the most important thing in any of our lives, and that's where we're going when we leave this earth. Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate you guys. We love you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast.